This album kicks off with a 30-second skit of someone entering the web, I assume by dial-up. I heard that annoying ass sound, and immediately transitions into the 6-minute track, which is pretty nocturnal, pretty dark vibe to it. The kind of washy synthscape paired with the electric woodwind sound good, and I dig the vocoded vocals quite a lot. Speaking of vocoded vocals, they show up on this record a lot. Like a lot. I will say that midway through the song, it begins to swell and heighten to such an interesting build-up, but there's no payoff and has no effect because the song essentially is just a loop of itself for the entire 6 minutes, and it kind of bummed me out on first listen, but I came around to really just enjoy the vibe. This track has a lively feeling to it. It has a liquid funk groove, and the vocoded refrain is catchy. Dance with somebody, not by yourself. And the signature sax sound that the Midnight are known for makes its return here, giving the track some legs and a pretty soulful finish. Pretty fun track. 17 is exactly what you would assume to hear from a synthwave act. Tyler is singing about this relationship he had with this person and the kind of retrospective aspirations that came with it. The production features this kind of semi-subtle hip-hop beat with the rattling hi-hats and drum pattern, and holy moly dude, I love the chorus on here too. 17, 17. Pretty good start to the album so far. Here we have an interesting mix of like tropical house and dance. Lyrically, it's more retrospective views on time taking its toll on past dreams. The plopping, blocky percussion and the moaned vocal sample loitering around the track has this kind of Middle Eastern / Bollywood vibe to it. I don't know if it's intentional, but I like it a lot. The vocals here are good too. I will say that the hook didn't really have that oomph to capitalize off of the verses or the build-up, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. I'm pretty sure this is a tribute to Sega's most well-known game, their most revered IP, and that is Ecco the Dolphin Defender of the Future. A game I absolutely hated, but I love the soundtrack. And this song is a beautifully passive experience with the aquatic atmosphere of the game, sampling bits and pieces of it. Hearing the song in my headphones was nothing short of a nostalgia trip for me, because nothing says nostalgia like loving the soundtrack of a game you loathe. I appreciate the 80s high school aesthetic that treats prom night as the best night ever that is worked into the song. Tyler goes pretty high up in his vocal register, and there are these group backing vocals on the last leg of the track to really drive that feeling home. But for me, I didn't really get a whole lot from it. The song being 5 minutes long with these repetitious cycles of vocals kind of numbed me to the point where I just blanked out while I was listening to it. It was just a bit too invested in creating this atmosphere that I've heard from countless other synthwave artists. It's okay. It's okay. Another nocturnal, vocoded bop. That's it. That's the T. While the sound of this track isn't anything new relative to the rest of the album, I really enjoyed the vulnerable songwriting on this track. Tyler and featured guest star Jupiter Winter both have these verses and choruses where they both understand why they grew apart and viewing themselves as monsters for the things they were doing to each other. The instrumental refrain is aided by this distorted, gurgling monster vocal tidbit, though it could have done way more with the instrumental. Like I said, the songwriting and the performances are strong. Similar to the Search for Echo, this is another instrumental track, but this one does not have the density or the uniquity of its counterpart. The soft ambience does nothing to really capture my attention. The subtle background progressions are really basic, and the song sounds like it restarts a couple of times, but to no real effect or purpose at all. This is actually a synthwave rendition of a song off of Tyler's last album with the same song title. I have actually already heard this song, and hearing it again with a new coat of paint doesn't dramatically change my view on how I enjoyed it anyway. It's a very slow, sweet ballad about life in Brooklyn, referencing bridges and sirens and traffic. His vocal performance is loving and tender and makes for a unique track in the track listing. This is my favorite track on this album, hands down. The instrumental on here is gorgeous, the way it swells around the high passion hook, falling in the deep blue, and the way it's followed up with its cleansing saxophone passages is just mwah. The lyrics about a friendly interaction leading to a deeper connection than expected is well complemented by the instrumental here, as it ranges and intensifies based off of what's being said. It's like it's being scored instead of being sung on top of. It's amazing. It's amazing. Following up that amazing track is Night Skies. Rather than following the motif of having vocoded hooks and embellishments, all the vocals on this song are dripping in it, talking about destruction, and it also reminded me of one of my favorite Midnight songs, being Nighthawks off of Endless Summer. It even reuses the melody from Shadows off of Nocturnal, so to me it's a callback to their previous material, which I am an absolute sucker for. This song builds off of 17's hook and uses it in the background of this instrumental interlude. And while I just said I was a sucker for callbacks, in this instance, it didn't feel well placed or necessary in my view. Nothing of value or intrigue is really added to the album from this interlude. Could have been trimmed off the album, in my opinion. Capping off the album is Last Train, which I think is a great song that coalesces some of the themes we have been hearing on the record regarding time and moving into uncertain territories. The instrumental is moody, giving off this late night barren feeling, and serves well as a backdrop to the somber, earwormy slow jam about getting too attached to something and eventually losing it. It's a pretty great closer that grew on me quite a bit. So coming off of their last album, Kids, which was a bit underwhelming to me, I think the duo was able to refine the sound that we're going for on that album, and were able to provide a more focused product here. I understand their signature SAXWAVE sound is what drew in such a large audience in the first place, and to some people who just want to hear that sound, they're probably not going to enjoy this record as much. But for me, this was a nice bounce back. They brought back the saxophone on a couple of tracks and tried up some more sounds, most notably the heavily vocoded songs and some hip-hop influences here and there on some songs. A couple of tracks I thought were lackluster, but for an album that's nearly an hour long, a majority of the tracks I was having a lot of fun listening to, especially on my second listen. Is this their best album or best project? I personally don't think so. But if you're a fan of Synthwave or a fan of the Midnight, or just want to listen to some pretty nocturnal music, pretty vibey music, I highly recommend this one. Give it a...